Journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, who's back on the show. Very, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Really good to have you back here. First conversation of the day, migrants. Wasn't planning to talk about that first. There were quite a lot of other topics, but just half an hour before we came on air, we learnt that the first migrants who've come over on the Channel dinghies yesterday in the afternoon have been detained with a view to returning them to France in return for getting someone back from France. Now, Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, has already sort of poo-pooed this in interviews. He was on the show briefly yesterday from a boat in the Channel. Not the first politician to do it, but, we always welcome anyone who's publicising the true, face of what is going on. Do you think this is actually going to be these people are going to be detained? Do you think that it's going to be a game changer and it will actually deter people from coming on those boats?
Well, I think the very idea that some migrants being detained when they get to Britain is breaking news probably says everything we need to know about the state of the situation. Look, I don't think it's a step backwards in the sense that apparently this could take 800 people back to France, and what it means is that some people can be... No.
800 people.
Says.
Well, no. No one actually thinks.
Over a year, I should add.
Well, by the end of this year,
yes,
if it goes ahead, if it's 50 a week. Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So that's great. Which is not a huge number when more than 25,000 have come so far.
Well, 800 come a week at the moment.
Right. Yeah. So I think the question is it a step back? I don't think it is. Will it be a deterrent? It seems unlikely because they say, well, if you have a link to the UK, you can apply online in France. So I guess that saves us money on migrant hotels and processing fees. So that's some degree of progress. But I don't feel like it will be a deterrent for people to stay in France and do that route when they know that if they come over by boat, there's a roughly 80% chance they'll be given the right to stay here permanently anyway.
And the rest. The key thing is, of course, will any of these people who are detained... because everyone's detained initially and then they're processed and provide some ID and then they're sent off to their hostels or their hotels or wherever else. But if they claim to be under 18 to some sort of foster care, even though they've got receding hairline and a beard, but there we are. Teenagers have aged a lot since my day. I'm laughing about it because it is now laughable. But realistically, the moment we saw in the words of the treaty, even though the likes of Lisa Nandy, the Culture Secretary, and other ministers saying no, there won't be all these human rights challenges. We'll be able to send these people back because it's France. We're not sending them back to Afghanistan. There won't be that problem of refoulement. A word we all learnt last year for the first time, let's be honest, where your risk of being sent back from the next country you're sent to would be an issue. That was a big issue, the Rwanda challenges as well. But fundamentally, the moment someone is told you're going to be one of the people we're going to send back to France, the lawyers, it's literally just like all these charities and NGOs get involved, lawyer up, you make your challenge, human rights challenge, Bob's your uncle, you are now bogged down for years and years and years.
Well, if Bob's your uncle, you might have a chance of getting in. That's what the scheme says.
But as long as he lives here.
Yeah, exactly. Lisa Nandy, the Cabinet Minister, has said that there won't be these human rights appeals that take ages because they will be done in France. But it turns out the deal that's been signed says the exact opposite of that. And I think
it's always in the detail.
If the case is that they can go through those processes, then first of all, that means some of them won't be going back to France. They'll be staying here. So it undermines the entire concept, and secondly, it costs a fortune again, which is the situation.
And we know exactly how when these things go to the tribunals. We've seen exactly what the decision of the judges is. I found it fascinating. Look, you're someone who, let's face it, you're from the sort of woke left. And wishy-washy, liberal, woke left.
Trying to make me more unpopular than Bonnie Blue.
Is that possible? I don't know right now. Yeah. Who do you hate on the show most today, guys? Is it Benjamin Butterworth or Bonnie Blue? That's the question for the day. Do not write in.
Yeah, I'm Bonnie Beige.
But you are very liberal, wishy-washy, and even you can now see the insanity of our open borders.
Well, it is insane because, I believe that we should take refugees, and I think we have a proud history of doing that, and there are many that have contributed enormously.
Yeah.
But I think there's a deep dishonesty to the politics around this situation, which is that there are two things. I think Keir Starmer would do better for his own base, let alone anyone else, to make the case for taking some refugees. I think most people would actually accept the moral case. But the second...
I think people do. People are very welcoming of Ukrainians who are welcoming of the Hong Kong Chinese coming over. I mean, with British passports.
And the Afghanis that served with our own troops.
Yeah, people are very welcoming and open about it, but they just simply don't believe, quite rightly, that the average young man who's thrown away his documentation on a dinghy on the way over from Calais is anything other than an economic migrant or an illegal worker. bugger.
But I think politicians have to be honest that the ability to be a refugee, the ability to move, has never been more accessible.
Yep.
And the scale on which it's happening is something that is creating huge problems, not just here in France, in Germany, in Spain, in
accepting
Greece.
a few thousand or even a few tens of thousands of people in exceptional circumstances from one country. Look, taking Jewish emigres and Jewish refugees, at the Second World War. This is completely. We're on a different scale here. We're talking about, let's be honest, billions of people who want to leave their basket case, economically mired, war-torn, civil war-torn countries to come to Europe. Sorry, we're full. Also, why can't those people stay at home? And our country didn't just miraculously happen out of the blue. People fought and died and battled for centuries to get the rights that we have and the quality of life that we have in the West and across the West. It didn't just happen. It wasn't given to us here in Britain. So why do people stay? Why don't they, if we're going to get the brightest, the best, why don't you stay and improve your own country and fight for the people that, of your country? That's what I think is really strange.
There is an example. Denmark has had a much calmer strategy on this, and it's had a left-wing social democratic government for most of the time.
Yep.
But when Syria started to recover and find its feet again, it said to all the Syrians that had arrived there, off you go, you're going back. Quite easily. And, that isn't a country with a far-right government. It's been run by their equivalent of the Labour Party most of the time. So there is a precedent for doing this. And I also think you say that people fought and died. They fought fascism. And I'm afraid some of these countries, the version of Islam they have is inherently fascist. It's incredibly controlling, authoritarian, not a cultural match. And I think that there is a danger in some of those people.
Yeah, absolutely, particularly people they want to take from, lots of Labour Party people want to take people from Gaza. Not a single person. Genuinely, no. Full stop, no. Let's talk about Ukraine, though. Donald Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, met with Vladimir Putin yesterday. There's now, after a phone call Vladimir Putin had with European leaders, including Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine, he said there's going to be a meeting as early as next week with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, face-to-face, but their first face-to-face meeting since 2018. And then there could be conditional on him agreeing also to have a meeting in person with Vladimir Zelensky. Do you have any hopes that Vladimir Putin would be serious about coming to the table on a ceasefire before his military aims are reached, or do you think that the economic pressure, sanctions on India as secondary tariffs and things for dealing with Vladimir Putin on oil and gas, do you think that will help bring him to the table?
Well, Volodymyr Zelensky has said that he thinks a ceasefire is now more likely, and so that. It
was a 0% before.
Yes, that's true. So I suppose that's a modicum of hope. I think the truth is, Donald Trump came in saying, "I'm going to fix this war in 100 days," which clearly didn't happen. In fact, the number of Russian attacks on Ukraine has doubled this year compared with last. And so I think if you look at Putin's actions rather than his words, it says that he's got no intention of backing down and that he's not been intimidated by Trump. Now, he is obviously Trump is trying to put these sanctions on India for using Russian oil, and he's trying to hit them where it hurts. The Russian economy has done better than many expected, but it is still fairly weak. And so I think the best hope of getting Putin round the table probably is to starve him of the funds that he needs.
Yeah, well, again, reality is, though, he's got, billions and billions, and hundreds of billions, gold bullion sort of ready, salvaged away, knowing that this day would come. Let's also talk about the possibility of more tax rises. Keir Starmer yesterday, interesting, we got that £51 billion black hole. Well done, Rachel Reeves. Talked about that on the show a lot yesterday. He was asked, as always, does he repeat his pledges about not putting tax up on working people? It's about the fact we already had that jobs tax on the national insurers, employers side of it. He kind of wouldn't repeat those pledges again. That's not putting income tax rates, VAT rates or national insurance rates up for people. We've already had a half breaking of that national insurance pledge. We've got tax thresholds being frozen, which means that actually tax does go up for people. They move into a different tax bracket, but you haven't put the tax rate up. The whole in the public finances we're looking at, identified yesterday by a think tank, is such that actually you're looking at the equivalent of 5 pence on income tax. That is a huge tax rise on basic rate for ordinary people. But that would just be politically untenable. I mean, that is just,
Yeah.
you're automatically out of office next time round, as if they weren't already. But there's now lots of talk about how else they can get that money. And one of the things they'll be looking at is council tax hikes. Now, Angela Rayner wants to have some funding reforms, and basically millions of households who are in wealthier areas, not necessarily those who are wealthy themselves, will end up having to basically subsidise poorer areas. Is that fair?
Well, I actually think the idea in principle is fair, because Rishi Sunak had said about how he changed the formula so that less money was going to cities, which tend to have higher rates of poverty, and going to the home counties, which I thought was a kind of obscene way to behave. And he seemed to boast about it.
Labour want to help Labour areas, and Tories wanted to help Tory areas.
But I do think this is the kind of thing that you would expect a Labour government to do. Areas like Westminster and Kensington and Chelsea have the lowest council tax rates in the whole country. Now, Kensington and Chelsea in particular is extremely wealthy.
But don't they have because they have very efficient services?
Well, and quite limited services often. But
maybe that's what people want.
But I do think there is an argument for this, to say that there are areas of this country that have been terribly let down. Their infrastructure, their town centres, so much about those places they called it levelling up, is falling apart. And so I think asking some of the wealthiest areas to pay a bit more to cover that is fair. The problem is, what this report talks about is that it would be London and the South. Now, London in particular might have very high house prices, but there are many people in those homes, especially people that rent, who are not earning a lot of money, have next to nothing left. And so the house...
After their huge rents.
Right.
Oh, indeed, after their huge mortgages.
The house price, which dictates the council tax band, is not a reflection of their wealth in the way that maybe it is in some other parts of the country. And so there's a danger that, because they talked about Camden Council could be affected by
My
this.
local council, hello.
Now, Camden has many rich people, but it also has many very poor people. And so the idea that you can simply take from one council...
Yeah, my street has some very, very expensive properties, and it also has council flats. I mean, as a lot of cities do have.
Yeah.
But this is the thing. At the end of the day, taxes are going to go up. It's a question of whose taxes are going to go up, and everyone's going to be basically rallying for well, everyone else's but mine. But actually, the reality is the black hole is so big, it's going to be everyone's. And also, when we have borrowing, it's going sky high, £110 billion a year going out on borrowing, and that's not even just paying off the debt that we've accrued over the last 20, 30 years. That is paying the interest on the debt. This is literally like having a huge mortgage and never paying it off. Ever paying it off and thinking, well, that's okay. No, it really isn't. It really isn't. You can't pay an interest-only mortgage forever.
And I think about £10 billion of this is increase in interest payments, and 22 billion of it is a familiar figure, is economic growth not being as high as expected. So the only way to actually fix this gap
is to have growth.
But that's what we still don't have.
If you continue to spend a fortune on welfare and have people not working, and if you continue to spend, rake in more and more taxes, particularly taxes on jobs, ta-da! You're going to see you're not going to have growth. It is mind-blowing. Gordon Brown, the former Prime Minister, former Chancellor, his solution today apparently is a gambling tax raid. And they use that to fund benefits reform, which would end the cap on two-child benefit. I mean, brilliant. Let's just encourage more people who don't work. And by the way, he keeps saying most of these people work. They don't. One person works 2 days a week, is not working. If you've got 3 or more kids, you both need to be working full-time to pay for that. Or Dad needs to get a better job. I'm old-fashioned on these things, but this is not the reform that the British people are crying out for. Just one final topic I want to get to before we get to the lots of calls which are already coming in on this, and that is... This is so frustrating. HMRC, if you've ever tried to call the tax man, I mean, good luck. Good luck with ever trying that. I say, unless you're a billionaire or unless you work for a multinational company, where they get a hotline, guys. They get their own dedicated tax man or woman. Not us normal mortals. Literally hundreds of thousands of calls are not answered. People just give up after 3 hours of waiting. And if you ever wonder why they don't answer your calls and don't get any work done and don't reply to it, I've never had a reply to anything when I've written or emailed HMRC. It's because civil servants are busy going on courses. They're doing their DEI and goodness knows what. Well, staff at HM Revenue and Customs were able to log in remotely on Wednesday or attend a session actually in person. I know, amazing. Sometimes going in the office. And this was a session, a seminar on, I kid you not, the guilt of being British. This is what people paid for by you and me as public servants to serve you and me in the public. This is what they were doing on a Wednesday afternoon, learning about why they should be, by the guilt of being British. Do you feel any guilt about being British? Because I'm prouder of lots of things in my world and my life, but being British is absolutely on that list.
Well, I think Jacob Rees-Mogg actually hit the nail on the head, where he said it's odd that so many people that hate the country would want to run it. Which is what working in a government department is. It kind of blew my mind that they literally called it the guilt of being British.
Yeah, you think they'd hide it a bit,
right? That isn't
you?
the tabloid headline. That's actually what the session was.
It was a listening circle.
Exactly, but not listening.
I mean, it literally wants to. It makes me want to shoot myself in the head. Thinking if someone made me attend that, I would rather shoot myself in the head. I really would.
I think it tells you quite a lot, because obviously there will have been layers of managers that this would have gone through for the funding and the time allocation of staff in order to be approved, and clearly they thought it was okay. I don't understand why you would need any discussions of this nature, regardless of what they think, because it's not to do with the job of working at HMRC. It's not a skill relevant.
This has got nothing to do with. Well, it was billed as a powerful, interactive and reflective listening circle, exploring the emotional complexity of being South Asian and British, covering topics including the emotional weight of colonial history as part of the taxman's commitment to diversity, equality and inclusion.
Well, they can be emotionally complex at 6:01 when they've finished taking the calls, right?
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
It is absurd.
I think you'll find it's 4:59 when they stop taking your calls.
But it's this thing of sort of running everything a bit like a students' union. You know, this is what you expect in a society like that, not in a government department, not in a business.
You see, even he's woke and liberal and wishy-washy, and even he thinks this is madness. Seriously, guys, you know, the tide has turned. 10:23 is the time. Just some breaking news. 2 women and a man have been charged with showing support for a prescribed terrorist group, Palestine Action, following a protest in central London on July the 5th. The Met Police have said, I'm surprised it's just 3, because there are an awful lot of people showing support for the prescribed terrorist group, Palestine Action. An awful lot of people around the world, including many academics and others, apparently think it's absolutely fine for people to support a prescribed terrorist group. There's a reason why you can actually support people of Palestine, you can support children in Gaza, etc., without actually having to support a prescribed terrorist group. I think it'd be quite simple to do that if you chose to do that. But if you don't, then apparently you will actually be facing criminal charges, allegedly. Anyway, great to hear that.